When we speak of sharing our needs, it is not about merely speaking them aloud. Words alone do not move the divine. You can utter 1,000 prayers, yet if they rise only from your tongue and not your heart, they carry no power. It is the sincerity behind what you express that opens the door for response. The universe does not listen to noise, it listens to truth. When the heart speaks with honesty, the whole of creation bends to listen. That is the power of sincere expression. Look around you, every form of life expresses itself honestly. A flower does not pretend to be a tree. A river does not hide its longing to reach the ocean. It simply flows without shame, without pride, fully committed to its path. But human beings have learned to hide. We hide our pain behind strength, our needs behind pride, our love behind fear. We think showing what we need makes us less, and in that hiding we become invisible even to ourselves. When you share your need with sincerity, you are not performing a ritual, you are revealing your essence. There is no greater act of connection than that. When you sit quietly, close your eyes and speak not to an image, not to an idea, but to that silent intelligence that breathes you and say, "This is what I truly feel, this is what I truly need," something within you begins to align, because you are no longer divided. The moment your expression matches your truth, life begins to respond. So often people ask, why doesn't God answer my prayers? The question itself hides the answer. God cannot answer what you do not truly ask. You may speak the words, but if your mind doubts and your heart resists, the vibration is broken. You are asking with your mouth and denying with your mind. The divine responds not to words, but to energy, to the alignment of your being. If your thought, emotion, and intention move in one direction, even the impossible begins to bend. When your prayer is real, you don't need to repeat it endlessly. Just once, from the depth of your being, is enough. One breath of pure sincerity carries more power than 1,000 empty chants, because that moment of truth, that instant when your inner world is naked before the divine, is when you are most alive. In that aliveness, you are connected. Sometimes people share their needs out of fear, not faith. They cry not because they trust, but because they panic. But fear never creates connection. Fear is noise, sincerity is music. When you share from sincerity, there is calm in your voice, even if you are weeping. Because deep down, there is trust that you are heard, that your truth matters. And that trust itself becomes the bridge through which God responds. You must understand this. The divine does not respond out of obligation. It responds out of resonance. When your being resonates with truth, it aligns with the higher intelligence of existence. It is not about convincing God. It is about becoming clear enough for God to move through you. A muddy stream cannot reflect the sunlight, but when the water's clear, the reflection is effortless. Sincere expression is that clearing. It is when you drop your masks, your pretenses, your need to appear strong, and simply say, "I am here. This is who I am." That honesty heals you even before the response arrives, because truth itself is a healer. When you live in pretense, you are fragmented. When you live in truth, you are whole. And when you are whole, divine grace flows naturally. Even when you cannot find the right words, your silence can speak if it is sincere. When tears flow not from pain but from presence, they are a form of prayer. Every cell in your body begins to express your need, and the universe listens. You may not hear an answer in sound, but you will feel a shift in your state. The burden lightens, clarity rises, peace enters. That is how the divine responds, not through miracles that defy nature, but through movements that align with it. Many times, the answer comes not as what you wanted, but as what you needed. The moment you speak sincerely, you open yourself to a wisdom beyond your Comprehension, you may ask for comfort and receive courage. You may ask for an escape and receive endurance. The divine does not give what pleases your momentary mind. It gives what nurtures your eternal growth. So when you share, do not bargain. Do not say, "If you give me this, I will do that." Speak as one who trusts, not as one who trades. Just express what is real in you and then be silent. Let your sincerity do the work. Life has its own timing, its own intelligence. Trust it enough to wait, and when the response comes in the quiet of your heart, in a sudden idea, in an unexpected event, you will know, because sincerity sharpens your awareness. You begin to see that nothing is coincidence, that every whisper of life carries meaning. The one who lives in truth no longer asks, "Why is this happening to me?" He begins to ask, "What is life trying to show me?" And that is when your relationship with the divine becomes alive. Faith is not a word you speak. It is a vibration you live in. It is not something you hold in your mind. It is something that settles deep in your being. Words may rise from the surface, but faith comes from the depth. When you pray or share your needs, what truly reaches the divine is not the sound of your voice, but the strength of your belief. You may repeat the same prayer 1,000 times, but if your heart trembles with doubt, even the loudest cry goes unheard. And you may whisper a single word with complete trust, and it will echo across existence. That is the difference between empty words and living faith. When you pray, you must understand that the divine does not need to be informed. You are not giving God new information about your life. He already knows the map of your destiny, the weight of your worries, and the shape of your dreams. What you are really doing is opening your own heart to that awareness. Faith is not about convincing God. It is about convincing yourself that you are not separate from His grace. When you stand before life with that awareness, you stop begging and start trusting. You stop asking, "Will it happen?" and start saying it's already in motion. Most people pray out of fear, not out of faith. Their words are filled with desperation, their hearts with doubt. They pray only when they are cornered, not when they are connected. When you approach the divine in fear, your vibration is scattered. It's like tuning a radio to the wrong frequency. You can't receive the signal clearly, but when you pray in faith, your energy aligns. It becomes still, focused, steady, and in that stillness, communication happens naturally. The divine is not far away. It is simply tuned to a higher frequency of consciousness. Faith is the bridge that connects you to that frequency. When your heart is steady with faith, even silence becomes prayer. You don't have to beg, shout, or demand. Your very presence becomes receptive. Life listens not to how you ask, but from where you ask. If you ask from fear, it gives you lessons. If you ask from faith, it gives you grace. Because faith carries the fragrance of surrender, it is saying, "I may not understand the path, but I trust the one who leads it." Faith beyond words is a state of surrender so complete that even if the situation does not change, your heart remains peaceful. You begin to understand that divine timing is not human timing. Sometimes the delay is not denial, it's preparation. The divine often withholds what you think you want so it can give you what you truly need. Faith means trusting even when there is no visible sign, holding on even when everything seems uncertain, believing not because you see proof, but because you know there is purpose. There is a quiet confidence that comes with faith. You stop chasing answers and start aligning with understanding. You stop asking, "Why me?" and begin to see what for. You begin to notice that the moments that once broke you are the same moments that shaped you. You realize that unanswered prayers are not punishment. They are protection. When you live with that awareness, you no longer cry in despair, you rest in trust. There was once a time in your life when something seemed impossible. You worried, you prayed, and somehow it worked out. You called it coincidence, luck, or timing, but it was faith in disguise. Every time you believed, even a little, life responded. Every time you held on, even when your mind said give up, something unseen carried you forward. That is faith in motion. It may not always shout its presence, but it never fails to act. You see, when you speak words of prayer without faith, it's like planting seeds on dry ground. You can water them with repetition, but nothing will grow. But when faith is present, even a single seed in the desert can bloom. Faith is the water, the sunlight, and the soil of your inner garden. Words are just the tools. Faith is the life force that gives them power. When you speak to God, speak not to convince, but to connect. Don't rush to be heard. First, be aligned. When faith rises in you, your words may become fewer, but their weight increases. Your prayer may shrink in size, but it expands in strength. You begin to live in awareness that God is not someone you visit when life goes wrong. He is the silence within you when everything goes right. Faith beyond words means you carry the presence of prayer even after you stop praying. It means your steps, your choices, your thoughts all reflect your trust in the unseen hand guiding you. You no longer separate your life into sacred and ordinary. Everything becomes sacred because faith has entered everything. That is when miracles cease to be surprises. They become your way of life. There is a certain beauty in being vulnerable, though the world may teach you otherwise. From childhood, you are told to be strong, to hold yourself together, to never show weakness. You grow up wearing invisible armor, believing that hiding your pain makes you powerful. But that armor does not protect you. It isolates you. It keeps not only others away, but also the divine. Because where there is a wall, even light cannot enter. When you open yourself, when you allow your heart to be seen without masks or defenses, that is when something higher begins to move through you. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is the highest form of courage. When you go before God and say, I don't have it all figured out, you are not falling apart, you are falling into truth. To be vulnerable means to be real. It means to stop performing for the world and to start being honest with yourself. You see, the moment you try to appear strong all the time, you are disconnected from your own humanity. And if you cannot embrace your own humanness, how will you ever feel the touch of the divine? The divine does not connect to what you pretend to be. It connects to what you truly are. There is an energy that moves through vulnerability. It is raw, alive, unfiltered. When you cry in sincerity, when your voice trembles in truth, when your soul finally admits, I cannot do this alone, that vibration is powerful enough to reach heaven. Because it is real. The universe resonates with what is real. When you are vulnerable, you are not broadcasting your pain. You are opening the channel through which grace can flow. The hardest thing for most people is to let themselves be seen. You can show the world your achievements, your strength, your composure. But can you show your fear, your longing, your brokenness? The world may judge, but the divine never does. God responds not to perfection, but to authenticity. When you open your heart in vulnerability, you are not diminishing yourself. You are expanding into something vast. The river does not shrink because it bends. It flows because it yields. There was once a woman who spent her life trying to appear strong. Whenever trouble came, she smiled, saying, I am fine. Inside, she was crumbling. One night, when the weight became too much, she fell to her knees and whispered, I am tired. That moment of release, that single honest breath, changed everything. It was not that her problems vanished overnight, but her burden did. Because when you finally open yourself, you allow life to carry you. Until then, you are trying to carry life. Vulnerability is not about exposing yourself to everyone. It is about being open before existence itself. It is saying, I am human, I feel pain, I feel fear, but I am willing to trust. That willingness transforms pain into prayer. It transforms loneliness into connection. It turns tears into purification. Every tear that falls with awareness washes a little bit of resistance from your being. People often think that being spiritual means being unshakable, untouched by emotion. No, spirituality is not about becoming stone. It is about becoming transparent. When light passes through glass, the glass is not strong because it resists. It is strong because it allows. When you become transparent in this way, you are no longer limited by fear. You begin to live as an open channel where even pain becomes purposeful, where even struggle carries grace. The energy of vulnerability is sacred because it dissolves the ego. The ego thrives on control, on pretending to know, on pretending to be complete. But the moment you admit, I don't know, something deeper takes over. You make space for the divine to act. The less you pretend, the more you receive, and that is the paradox. Only those who admit their emptiness can be filled. When you share your need with an open heart, without hiding behind pride, it is not a cry of weakness. It is an act of alignment. You are saying to life, I am ready to stop fighting. I am ready to receive. And in that readiness, grace flows effortlessly. You no longer struggle to make things happen. You allow them to unfold. The river that trusts its course always reaches the ocean. Sometimes vulnerability may bring pain. People may not understand it. The world may take advantage of it. But that does not matter, because your openness is not for the world. It is for your own liberation. The one who lives behind walls is never truly safe. He is simply imprisoned. But the one who opens his heart, even if it breaks, experiences the vastness of existence. There is a silent strength that rises from true vulnerability. It is not loud, it does not seek attention, but it carries the power to transform. When you stop hiding from yourself, when you stop pretending before life, you begin to experience God not as a concept, but as a living presence within you. Because now there is no separation between your inner world and the divine flow. It is one movement. Pride is a subtle prison. It does not come with chains, yet it binds tighter than steel. It whispers, you don't need anyone, you can handle it all. It makes you appear strong on the outside while hollowing you from within. The most dangerous part is that pride disguises itself as strength, but it is not strength. It is resistance. It closes the door to grace. When you say, I don't need help, you are not declaring independence. You are declaring separation. And wherever there is separation, divine flow cannot exist. There is a difference between confidence and pride. Confidence knows its source, pride forgets it. Confidence says, I can because I am guided. Pride says, I can and I need no guidance. The moment you begin to believe that you are the doer of everything, you have already distanced yourself from the infinite intelligence that makes everything possible. You may achieve success for a while, but it will come with a heaviness because it rests entirely on your shoulders. Pride exhausts you while humility elevates you. When you drop pride, something miraculous happens. You become light. Life begins to move through you with ease. Every act becomes effortless because you are no longer carrying the illusion of control. The river does not carry itself. It flows because it allows gravity to guide it. When you stop resisting, the same natural grace begins to move through your life. But as long as pride stands between you and the divine, that flow is blocked. You will find yourself struggling, even in small things, because you are working against the current of existence. Pride often comes in subtle ways. It hides behind statements like, "I don't want to bother anyone," or "I'll manage somehow." It feels noble, but in truth it is fear. Fear of appearing small, fear of being dependent, fear of being vulnerable. Yet, to admit your need is not to be weak, it is to be wise, because only the one who admits emptiness can be filled. Only the one who bows can rise. The seed must go down into the soil before it can grow upward into the light. The ego is always trying to prove something to the world, to others, and even to itself. But the soul has nothing to prove, it only wants to express. Pride makes you perform for life instead of participating in it. It makes you forget that the very breath you take is borrowed. Every moment you live is given. When that understanding sinks in, humility naturally dawns. You no longer see yourself as a separate entity struggling to control outcomes. You see yourself as part of an infinite dance where everything is interwoven. It is pride that prevents you from sharing your true needs with God. You think, "Why should I ask? I will figure it out." But the act of asking is not dependence, it is alignment. When you ask, you acknowledge the higher intelligence that sustains you. You stop trying to manipulate life and instead begin to flow with it. Pride builds walls, humility opens doors. The divine does not enter where arrogance resides, because arrogance leaves no room for grace. There's a story of a man who prayed every day for blessings, yet his life remained stagnant. One night, he finally cried out, "Why don't you answer my prayers?" And a voice within him said, "You have never truly prayed. You have only demanded. You have spoken as though I owe you something." That night he fell silent, and for the first time his heart bowed. In that silence, peace descended, because real prayer begins only when pride ends. When you break the wall of pride, you begin to see how small your control truly is, and how vast life really is. You stop fighting with reality. You no longer measure your worth by how much you can achieve alone. You start to see the beauty of being held, guided, and supported. You start to trust that life knows better than you what you truly need. That shift from control to surrender is what transforms prayer into communion. Humility does not mean thinking less of yourself. It means seeing yourself clearly as part of something much greater. It means knowing that while you are significant, you are not separate. When you live this way, you stop competing with life and start cooperating with it. Your actions become purposeful, your relationships softer, your decisions wiser, because now they are not driven by ego but by awareness. The moment you let go of pride, divine help flows naturally. Answers begin to appear in unexpected ways. People come into your life at the right time. Strength arises from nowhere. What once seemed impossible becomes simple because you are no longer blocking the process. The divine does not need your perfection. It needs your permission. And that permission comes when you say, "I cannot do this alone. Guide me." That single act of surrender has the power to transform everything. When people say, "I don't hear God," it is not because God is silent. It is because the noise within them is too loud. Life is constantly speaking, whispering through moments, people, signs, and even silence. But if your mind is filled with endless chatter, if your heart is clouded with fear or expectation, you will not hear that whisper. God does not shout. He speaks in the subtle, and only a still heart can recognize that voice. Many expect the divine to answer with thunder and lightning, with visible miracles and dramatic turns of fate. But that is not how grace usually moves. Grace is quiet. It speaks through intuition, through the timing of events, through a feeling of peace in your chest when your mind still doubts. The divine's language is not sound, it is sensitivity. The more aware you become, the more clearly you begin to hear the guidance that was always there. There is a difference between hearing and listening. Hearing happens to your ears, listening happens to your being. You can hear thousands of words and miss the meaning entirely, but when you truly listen, even silence speaks. Many times, God's response is not what you want to hear, it is what your soul needs to hear. Sometimes his silence is the answer, because silence forces you to go inward, to grow in understanding, to develop faith that is not dependent on immediate proof. When your prayer comes from desperation, you want quick results. You want a voice from the sky saying, "Do this, go there." But when your prayer comes from trust, you stop demanding and start perceiving. You begin to notice how life rearranges itself subtly to guide you. A person may cross your path with a word that shifts your whole direction. A door may close that pushes you toward a better one. The divine responds in the rhythm of existence, not in the urgency of your emotions. You must learn to listen not just with your ears, but with your awareness. When you quiet the noise of your opinions and expectations, something begins to rise within you, a knowing, a gentle certainty that does not come from logic, but from life itself. This inner knowing is how God often speaks. He does not always answer in words. Sometimes he answers by changing your perception. You see the same situation differently, and suddenly peace replaces panic. That shift is not coincidence. It is communication. The reason many people feel unanswered is because they are waiting for the response in a specific form. They want God to agree with their plan, but the divine is not your assistant. He is your guide. He doesn't always tell you what you want to hear because his purpose is not your comfort. It is your growth. If you truly listen, you will realize that even his no is compassion in disguise. Sometimes he closes one door to protect you from what would have harmed your spirit. Sometimes he delays what you ask for to strengthen what you are becoming. To hear the unheard response, you must stop treating prayer as a one-way conversation. After you speak, sit in silence. Don't rush to move on. Stay still. Allow the echo of your words to fade within you. Somewhere in that quiet, you will feel a shift, a lightness, a sense of assurance, a subtle peace. That is the beginning of response. It is not dramatic, but it is divine. When you start living with awareness, you will see that the divine speaks through everything. The breeze that cools your face when you are troubled, the friend who appears when you feel alone, the failure that redirects you toward your true path. Every event carries a message, every delay hides a lesson, every pain plants a seed of purpose. You just need eyes that can see beyond the surface. Faith is the ear that hears what the mind cannot. If your faith is alive, even the smallest sign becomes meaningful. But if your faith is weak, even a miracle will look ordinary. So keep your awareness sharp. Pay attention to how life unfolds around you. The divine's guidance rarely appears as commands. It appears as coincidences that are too precise to be random. When you live in awareness, every coincidence becomes a conversation. The real challenge is to trust even when there is no visible answer, because sometimes God's greatest response is silence, a silence that invites you to deepen your faith. When you stop fighting for answers and begin to rest in trust, you realize that silence is not absence. It is the space where the next step is being prepared. Life never leaves you unanswered. It only waits for you to become ready to understand. When you begin to perceive this way, peace replaces impatience. You no longer keep asking, when will God respond? because you realize He always has. You just needed to listen differently. His voice is in your intuition, His response in your peace, His guidance in your awareness. You begin to move through life not as someone waiting for signs, but as someone walking in communion with them. Every moment becomes sacred because every moment carries His presence. Most people think that when they pray or when they ask, God should respond instantly, but the divine does not work according to your clock. Life is not a vending machine where you put in a prayer and immediately receive an answer. The divine functions in perfect timing, not your timing. There are moments when you cry out, you pour your heart before the heavens, and yet, silence. It feels like no one is listening, doesn't it? But that silence is not rejection, it is preparation. When life delays, it is not because it has forgotten you. It is because it is aligning what you've asked for with what you have become. Many times, if everything you asked for was given instantly, it would destroy you. You are not ready for what you are asking. You want blessings, but you are not yet built strong enough to carry their weight. Every delay, every pause, every unanswered moment is a way of shaping you so that when the blessing arrives, you do not break beneath it. The divine knows your capacity better than you do. You only see your desire. He sees your destiny. When you plant a seed, you don't stand over it demanding that it grow overnight. You understand that it takes time for the roots to strengthen beneath the surface before anything visible appears above. But when it comes to our own lives, we lose that patience. We forget that the unseen work is always happening. Sometimes God is not changing your situation. He's changing you within that situation, because if you do not grow, the answer will come and you will not recognize it. There are seasons where everything feels stagnant, where prayers seem unanswered, and faith begins to tremble. That is when most people quit. They lose trust just before the breakthrough. But if you can hold still during the silence, something extraordinary begins to unfold. In those quiet spaces, your understanding deepens, your faith matures, and your awareness sharpens. The delay becomes your teacher. It shows you how to be content even without visible results, how to trust even without evidence. When the divine prepares you, it often does so through contradiction. You ask for strength, and life gives you challenges. You ask for patience, and life gives you waiting. You ask for wisdom, and life gives you confusion. You ask for faith, and life gives you uncertainty. But these are not denials. They are the very processes that create the qualities you asked for. You cannot grow in patience without waiting. You cannot grow in faith without doubt. Life shapes you by giving you the opposite of what you expect, so that when the answer finally comes, you are capable of receiving it with depth, not desperation. You see, when you trust the timing, peace replaces panic. You stop chasing and start aligning. The prayer stops being a demand and becomes a doorway to awareness. When you stop forcing outcomes, you begin to see the subtle movements of grace. Life starts whispering guidance through delays, detours, and even disappointments. Every not yet from the divine is actually a not this way. It's a redirection, not a rejection. The truth is, the divine never forgets your prayer. Every genuine cry from the heart echoes in existence until the response is born. But the form of that response is often different from what you expect. Sometimes the blessing you prayed for arrives disguised as loss. Sometimes the opportunity you wanted is taken away only to reveal something greater you didn't even imagine. But if your mind is restless, you will only see what's missing, not what's manifesting. That is why awareness is essential. The moment you trust that everything is unfolding with precision, the need for control dissolves. You must also understand that life is not punishing you. It is preparing you. Waiting is not wasted time. It is sacred time. It is the gestation period of destiny. Just like a child cannot be born before 9 months, your blessings too have their own maturity period. You cannot rush divine order. If you pull the fruit before it ripens, you get bitterness instead of sweetness. So learn to wait with grace. Waiting with frustration is suffering. Waiting with trust is meditation. When you begin to rest in this awareness, something within you transforms. You start seeing divine timing everywhere. The person you met unexpectedly, the job that didn't work out, the delay that made you take another path, all begin to make sense. You realize that even the pauses were part of the plan. And when the blessing finally arrives, you will see that it came not a moment too early or too late, but exactly when you were ready to receive it. So, when it feels like your prayers are unanswered, don't lose heart. The silence is not absence, it is sacred orchestration. The divine is not ignoring you, he is refining you. The more you trust, the more you grow. And the more you grow, the clearer you begin to see how beautifully everything was arranged, even the waiting.